Empezamos. Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bruno Perez, and I'm here to make a presentation on computing and forensics. The idea is to motivate youngsters, and I'm going to address forensic computing with very basic concepts so that people understand what this is about. I'm not going to talk about applications, and when we finish, I'll be available for whatever questions you may have. So, let's compare between an autopsy done by an anatomic forensic and an autopsy done by a computer, so that you understand what forensic computer technicians do. My name is Bruno Perez. I come from Figueres in the province of Girona. To the east, you probably know David, a colleague of mine from my same area. Dali, the painter, comes from my town. And this image that you can see, well, of course, this is the tomb of two very famous people from Figueres, Dali and Pep Ventura, who invented the sardana, the traditional Catalonian dance. And we also have the inventor of the submarine buried here. And one night, the cemetery is lit with hundreds of candles, and there is a guided visit around the cemetery, and it's quite interesting. I myself would like to participate in this ritual. I'm going to talk about computing forensics, and I love to light up things with candles. And then I'll explain to you why I like to lit things with candles. For example, the cathedral in Burgos with exactly 15,000 candles. Do you lit candles at home? Yes? No? Is there something that you like? 15,000 candles? Don't you have questions when talking about 15,000 candles? How do you lit them? I don't only lit monuments, I also make drawings in the ground. Huge, large-scale drawings, 40-meter drawings. Here you have some examples. I have received the Guinness record for lighting of candles. I received it in December after having lit 82,000 candles. And do you know how these candles are placed? Well, one by one. Do you know how we lit them? One by one as well. And how we turn them off? We blow them off one by one. And how do we collect them? Well, with terrible back pain, as you can imagine, one by one. Why am I talking about candles? Well, because it's very important to talk about humility. A candle in the middle of a town serves no purpose, doesn't light much. But when you've got clear ideas and you know what you have to do, the group of candles can help you do amazing recreations. When you're going to do a forensic autopsy of a set of files, how many files are you going to work with or find? 200,000, 1 million, 2 million? Do you know how you're going to analyze them one by one? Yes? No, we're IT technicians. We have the tools we need not to do so, and that's the difference. But it's very important that we understand that files, even the smallest files, can provide us with the most important evidence. That's why, well, this is one of my hobbies, And it's a good metaphor to explain that your goal will not be reached overnight, but little by little. What matters is that you progress little by little. Sometimes you find yourself working with cases that are very complex, and think about candles, about this idea of living one by one. And out of these four characters, one is very important, which is the forensic doctor. And we run around the cemetery, and I'll share with you an anecdote if we have time. This this man explains the medical aspect, i.e., how people have died during this night tour. His name is Narcis Bardaleta. He was the director of the Forensic Institute in Spain. He is well known internationally. I don't know if you remember the terrible tsunami in Asia. He was the coordinator of the international team. So he's a renowned professional. And he's a close friend. He comes from the same town as me. He also has candlelighting as a hobby. And during this night tour, someone said that we had two forensics during the autopsy room. And people know what medical forensic doctors are, but nobody is familiar with computer forensics. And my friend was even surprised by what I was doing. And I asked him a favor. You as a forensic doctor, would you do an autopsy please to a computer? And my colleague said, have very basic knowledge on technology. Green is the turn on button and red the turn off. And I told him, no, don't worry. We're going to use the protocol of autopsy, of medical autopsy. This presentation is a presentation that I make in schools. And schoolers are often very much surprised by what I say, because it's true that many of them are familiar with the idea of forensics thanks to TV shows like CSI. 20 years ago, this was different because, these TV shows didn't exist. But now, thanks to CSI, for example, well, kids are familiar with these terms, with these concepts. And let me tell you what we did, my friend and I. We met one day with a group of students, and I gave my colleague a computer, which is the one you can see here. And this laptop, by the way, is a laptop that I found in a container, garbage container. I don't know if you've ever found garbage containers. If you want to exercise your computer forensics skills, you can go to a garbage container and start tinkering with it. And you'll probably be amazed by the amount of data you can extract. People are very unaware about the need to protect data. We talk about data protection, but if you go to whatever market or secondhand market, you will be able to purchase equipment with personal data. As a computer forensics, I see that it's quite common for employees that are made public to contact you, or an expert like myself, to be able to recover data from a laptop or from a smartphone. Sometimes companies contact computer forensics experts for data recovery, because perhaps the employee has taken with him a smartphone. And when you recover data, you're recovering also backups from iCloud, also pictures, personal pictures. And people need to understand that when they leave their workplace, if they're fired or whatever, they need to request a certificate for data destruction. Anti-forensic services. We have forensic services, but we also have anti-forensic services. And So when you return your mobile device or your laptop to the company with this certificate, then they're not going to retrieve your personal data. And in city councils, this is also an issue. And there will soon be political changes, and it's amazing how newly appointed regional ministers receive from the IT technicians and city councils a laptop and a smartphone with personal data from the previous person. And the problem for the forensic computing expert is that, well, of course, he will have to detect whether there's data already contained. So this is, as I was saying, a laptop that I found in a garbage container, and I told my medical colleague, let's do an autopsy. So I put it on the table and I said, let's begin. And he said, I don't know where I should start. And I told him, well, imagine this is a corpse, a dead body. What would be the first thing you do? What's the first thing you need to do with a corpse? Do you know? No? First thing you need to do? And students are really fun. Well, I take a look at the ear, I take a look at what's inside. No, what you have to do is first protect yourself. Protect yourself. Why? Because by protecting yourself, you're protecting the evidence. And he told me the first thing I need to do is to protect myself, to put on my gloves, also my lab coat, my head, my mask. And I said, just like myself, he was startled, he was surprised. I always use gloves when I need to manipulate keyboards that are not my keyboard. I always wear gloves for a reason. You know that keyboards have more bacteria than a toilet seat. And if you turn one around and shake it, yeah, you probably see that there's a bunch of dirt there. And the mask, you know that laptops have ventilators, and there's much dust and dirt accumulated, and nothing goes inside my lab without going through the compressor. I myself don't breathe that air. I wear a mask, and you always need to wear gloves because sometimes you need to extract a hard drive or clone a drive, and the notary is there with you in order to certify the process, because you need to make sure that the evidence is protected, and the notary is controlling that everything is done as required. And then the lab coat. What do I wear a lab coat? For two reasons. First, to access to my glasses, and second, because it's almost like a click, a commutation, to know that I'm in working mode. Throughout my career as a computer forensics, I've made big mistakes. At times, I've even destroyed evidence because I was in a hurry, I was under much pressure. For whatever reason, I've made mistakes. And lab coats help me, understand that I'm more in working mode, and help me be more concentrated on what I do. You can destroy a piece of evidence that is essential, vital, and that can lead to perhaps not arresting the perpetrator. So we need to be protected. And as I was saying earlier, there are many similarities between medical forensics and computing forensics. You may be surprised by this, and I showed my colleague this picture. This is a guy that has manufactured his own vacuum hood, and he's assembling a hard drive using gloves, as you can see. I also explained to my colleague that there are many similarities. Take a look at this slide. And on this slide, we can see how the incubator is very similar to the clean working station where the headers of disk drives are disassembled. In the world of medicine, there's a great number of similarities. On the one hand, we have the GPs, the general practitioners that help you with general minor health issues. And then they refer you to a specialist. And then we have people in an upper level, the researchers that are doing research to produce new drugs that will perhaps save our lives. And they're at the same level as hackers. And we need to, of course, pay due respect to hackers, because sometimes they give us a pill and they tell us this will help you heal. But how many clinical trials have had to be done to approve that drug, that medicine? In the world of cybersecurity, this has to be explained as well. You need to explain the entire process. Computer forensic professionals need to be very, very organized. Not everybody can be an expert in computer forensics. It's not just about having basic knowledge. It's also about attitude, about the mindset. Who can and who can't. If you take a look at the communications track, you can tell. Sometimes you have people that comes from the systems administrator, and if you see that his system has all the assets just listed and he knows of what the IPs are, everything is well documented, the cables are well laid out so that everyone can know how the system is set. Well, this person can be a computer forensic, but this other profile person that uses postage that is a bit lost can't. If you touch a piece of evidence and then you need to go to court, you need to demonstrate or prove that the steps you take, should another person do exactly the same, and the same results should be obtained, exactly the same. That's why it's very important that we talk about attitude. Computer forensics are very organized, very much so, and they need to be very, very patient, always. This is one of the most distinctive features. Once we are protected, we have our autopsy. What's the next step? The next step would be documenting as much as possible the evidence collected with pictures, with videos, etc. And this is something that forensic doctors and forensic computer technicians share. So it's a matter of collecting as much as you can. In our smartphones, we have wonderful cameras. You need to picture absolutely everything, serial numbers, whatever. Everything. I was one of the first who had to set up a forensic computing lab in order not to break the chain of custody. When you receive a phone, it's recognized by the notary. And how can I demonstrate that I'm not manipulating the smartphone? Well, in the lab, I set up an equipment made up of 12 video cameras. There's no dead angle. Everything is recorded around the clock, 24/7, since the time I break the precinct till the moment I place that seal once again. Everything's duly recorded. And sometimes it's 2 hours or 3 hours. Everything is duly recorded, duly documented. What else can I say? Recording, documentation. Let me give you a piece of advice. You need to work on a real-time basis. Not a matter of saying, today I'm going to extract, and in 2 months' time I'll check it out and I'll draft the report. No, it doesn't work like that. Memory fails, and the older you are, the more it will fail. So this is a good piece of advice to you. As I was saying, we need to document everything. We've perhaps done 5,000 pictures. The next step of the autopsy will be to examine the body from the outside. And students say, yes, we're going to look for bruises, for scratches. These are the signals that you need to look for. Aside from bruises and scratches, well, tattoos, for example. You know if this person used to be a military, biker, whatever. In an autopsy, in an IT autopsy, what are you looking for? Well, it's exactly the same. You're looking for marks. You're looking for barcodes, email numbers, serial numbers. In this laptop that I showed in the picture, this unwary person that bended had in the lower part the Wi-Fi code, the key or the password, and the name of the Wi-Fi. You know that with this information, we're able to, well, get a bit closer to accessing that data. Once this examination has been conducted and everything is duly documented and we've registered all of these marks and codes, we need to tinker with it. We need to open up the carcass. And he was telling me that the first thing you need to do is to prepare your tools, your instruments, and that's what we do as well. And as for the tools that I recommend you, I recommend you to have the typical tools you would use to disassemble phones, because laptops have are becoming more and more sophisticated. Let me explain to you how we work on a daily basis in a forensic lab. If, for example, you need to extract a disk drive to clone it in front of a notary, what you will never ever do is go there with a laptop and try to open it during 4 hours and then extract the drive and clone it. No, that's not how it's done. What are the best practices? Well, basically, you get this laptop, you analyze it well, you observe it, and you do your tests at home in your office so that when you have to go do this in front of a notary, you can be effective and do this in an agile manner. We, as computer forensics, how do we collect evidence? We're not law enforcement agencies. Those of us that are independent forensic computer technicians don't see is the evidence. The evidence is given to us. It's given to us by the customer, by the interested party. Steps that you need to follow. Step number 1. Whenever you speak with the customer, hi, how are you? Before he explains anything, you need to ask him for the name, surname, address, and the first thing you do is fill up a confidentiality or non-disclosure agreement so that everything that this person explains to you is duly protected and covered. This gives great, inspires trust in the customer. And then little by little, you need to prepare your budget considering the background. My customer is explaining to me this or that. What do I advise him or her to do? And this is worth X money. You prepare your quote, your budget. And if the customer accepts the quote, well, he will have to pay 50% in advance. So 50% money up front before I start working. And that person then accepts the operation. What's most important is that you need to have the consent documents or authorization documents, because this person is demonstrating that it is his document or his equipment, and is giving you the power to access his social media, his piece of equipment. If you don't have his or her consent, if you don't have his or her authorization, you won't be able to touch absolutely anything. Otherwise, you can be in deep trouble. I remember that I was working once in a case with dead people, and that was quite a number of years ago, and people passed away, and Facebook profiles were like they're up in the air, looming on the horizon. And what we see is that there are car accidents every day, and maybe the person that passed away in a car accident has info that is very important for a company. That happened to me once. I remember this widow who asked me please to meet one day. She was going to bring me her late husband's computer so that I would extract data. So we met, and she gave me a laptop. I had to extract all the documents, and the laptop belonged to her husband, a very renowned lawyer in Barcelona, and this lady suspected that he was unloyal to her. Let's imagine that I extract everything, I give it to her. I probably wouldn't be here today. I would have had great trouble. So, true. Sometimes we work, in a very difficult position. And we in Catalonia are used to living near the border. Sometimes you have the feeling that you have one foot in France, another one in Spain. And as computer forensics, sometimes you have the feeling that you're like on the boundary. But there is a limit. And my advice to you is to make sure that you don't exceed that limit. And because when you go to a hearing, a court hearing, and when you have to defend your report, and this backs you up. It's very important that you know where the limits are. Another piece of advice to you. Good. So, we're going to open the laptop, the smartphone. You need to do this first in your office or at home. We have the tools.
And you do double click and you get the top. And you see this man was hallucinating, and I said, what do you see? And said, let us think this is the corpse. And I made an important mistake there. I thought I was too smart. That's why it's important to be humble. If you're going to work in new technologies in computer science, there are not experts. Things change so fast, and experts do not longer exist. So you always have to be humble, and just some advice. You have to learn to forget. Because today you're working with some tools that make you feel comfortable, but after an update, everything changed. So what you did before is no longer useful. So you have to adapt yourself. You don't have to link on the past. And as I said, I was smart as, and I said, Dr. Narcis, I know that for forensic, when you open up a corpse, there's a technique. They draw a Y letter in your body so you can extract the different body organs, and the same about the head when they open up. And he said, no, that's Halford, and I use a Strudel's technique. And he explained to me that he cuts from the hip up until the lower arm, then opens you up, so in order to extract your body organs. And that's when you remember your mother telling you or telling me to shut up. And that was the time that I realized I was not going to say anything. So we have our computer on. Doctor looks, and I ask him, what do you see? And he said, I don't know. And think that they are body parts. The most important is the hard disk. Here we have all the parts that we're going to examine, and I explained to him that the first thing to be done is to clone the evidence. He said, how do you clone it? You just have to imagine that you have a corpse, and with a printer, a 3D printer, I do an equal corpse, and you work on the copy. But the original, you just keep it in the freezer. And this is cloning. So there we spoke about the difference of autopsy with a living body or not. And he said, of course not. It's always with dead corpses, but we have to do this examination with real or living computers. But you have to think that maybe we have to carry out an autopsy or data extraction of a CPD. When you get into a CPD, how do you do it? How do you manage? Well, is as is you get into a whale and you start extracting things. We have this clone hard disk, hard drive, and you are going to extract things. And I gave him the following similarities of the body parts we're going to get. We can examine the hearing of the here. You can get much information. What are the ears? The ears in this case can be, and as you know, we have some commands that are the connected Wi-Fi's through public or semi-public networks. You can geolocalize those Wi-Fi networks, so the evidence is geolocalizing a person. Of this, I will now speak about a real case. It was a disabled person with hearing impairment, and he couldn't communicate with his daughter. The father was sending emails and WhatsApps via Skype. They spoke with sign language, and he presented this evidence to prove that in fact he had a fluid communication with her daughter. Sometimes we speak about technological crimes, and there seem to be just a few, those that are in the law, but forensic might participate whenever there is a device. No matter what, here we're speaking about custody. Obviously, we could prove that all those emails were the case and that there was communication and it was good. Something else related to forensic is that you have to ratify your report in front of the judge. Here, we have to be really technical. The specificity of a forensic is that you have to know a lot about many different subjects. Good forensics are those that have a long experience. There are things in life that require experience. They should come from the world of programming so that they have really high knowledge of OS. At least they should know how a file system works. You know that in our profession we see that there are many intruders, and you should have at least you should have a formal education. At least you have to be an IT expert. Some people do not even know what a metadata is or a file extension, and this happens at court when discussing with the other party. In addition to OS, I believe it's important to come or to have knowledge about the world of systems, to have knowledge about virtualization, but not only to have heard about it, but really to be knowledgeable. And I come back to the example of the candles. I told you about the process. You end up with back pain, and this is not an easy profession. It's as technology. Technology is not easy. Technology has to be a study. You have to learn it. You have to devote hours. Nobody gives anything for granted. With the candles, we can speak about other similar. There is not such a thing as a red button that you can press and lit the candles. Don't you think that with autopsy just gives you a report, and the report you give it to the judge, but if you cannot defend it, it would not be worth it. So you have to work yourself on many things, and this is the attitude of a good forensic. At court, it's important to be able to defend your report. Here is with everything at stake. You can have a terrific report with 5 emails. It usually needs 50 to 60 pages long. This is an expert report of only 5 emails. The judge is not going to read everything but the conclusions, and it's you in the courtroom where you can have an impact on the judge ruling. So start learning to speak in public. You should be able to communicate, otherwise you will have a problem. What about the rest of the body? While we continue with this metaphor, especially for the young, of the things that we can do in a computing autopsy is to have a relation of all the USBs that were plugged into this device. If we speak about the dead person, the scraping, when CSI look at the nails to see whether they have sand and the used USB and is important. I remember about a case. This is a partner of a company that it gets really cross, wants to leave, and ask the IT expert about the server functioning. Explain him that it has a hard disk, a second hard disk in mirroring in a constant image, that also has all the information, all the backup. And this person remembers this data, said, okay, there are 2 hard disks that are equal. It's very clear to me. So what did he do? One day at night, he entered the office that had 24 security cameras. He gets in, he introduced his code. The cameras were recording. He got close to the server. It just gets hold of the hard disk, but unluckily the IT expert days before had just installed a 3rd hard disk with a few things, but he went into the wrong hard disk, but so that they didn't realize, he goes to a computer, gets the hard disk out, fix it in the bay and give it back to the server. So then you have to do an expert's report when you have to prove in a timeline how this person entered into the office, how the video camera are recording, how the images are real, are not manipulated, and then the OS shows that it has been moved, it has an incident, and it's been plugged, another device is being plugged in. So from here we can get a great deal of information. Something else that is important when we carry out an autopsy, if we see the body, one of the most important parts is the stomach, what the dead person had eaten, and we have some commands, the hashtag activity that speaks about the latest executions, execute or files, etc. And when you open up a stomach, you see some disgusting things. When you are a forensic ICT expert, you will also see some disgusting things, and you should be ready. Whenever I finish a presentation or a speech, I always have somebody that says, I want to get into somebody's PC because my girlfriend, this or that. To get into a third person private life can be dangerous thing. You should think that we are humans, and sometimes we see things that are difficult to digest, and as humans we might fall. So another similar with the 15,000 candles. I didn't put them, all of them, but together with a team. I was leading this team. If you're going to be in the world of forensics, you should have good colleagues and friends, even more. you know that you are under disclosure, but sometimes you should explain what you're touching without giving data, but you need it. You should also think that some years ago, the world of cybersecurity and forensics, we only had one textbook a year. Now we have so much information and we cannot manage all. And you need groups and teams and peers so they filter part of the information. So I want you to know that sometimes you have to deal with things and you should be ready and you should use your own resources to get out of those dark things. I use candles, as you say, of the good or positive things we can see is to know what a person had seen. I find this in labor relations cases. The majority of autopsies or the work you do may not end up in court. They end up just being a report. Maybe the manager of the company contacts you and say, I want to know what this employee is doing. And be aware of this. You need consent. Whether you can or not look into somebody's computer, and then you can do a report explaining at what time this person logs in, whether it's working, whether it's checking on the work, or just surfing the net, looking for different subjects. So we have those tools that allow us to see what they see. About what they see, this is just a demonstration, even though it's in Catalan. Sometimes what you see is not what it seems. And here I like to speak about false evidence. Forensic, their duty is to find the truth. On many occasions we see false evidence. Evidence can be manipulated. You can modify WhatsApp conversations. First, how can you know that this conversation is false? Just at the first sight. You know it's false because it's 1921 and it has 72% of a battery, and this doesn't happen at home. This is one of the demos when you speak with charters of lawyers or judges. You say that, tell them that evidence can be manipulated and that there are some applications that allow you to make the perfect simulation of a WhatsApp conversation. This person might tell you that the conversation, he eliminated the conversation, but he has just a screenshot, and this is what he or she might present. So you have to prove whether this is true or not, because a person can have a problem, a very serious problem. So be aware of false evidence as this one that, you know, you can also simulate a Facebook conversation, a totally faked Facebook profile. You know that Pokemon, what people learned was not to look for those, but they learned to modify their GPS position. Now, to all this generation of Pokemons that will, from here on, they will have a mother, or they will have a girlfriend, they may fake the location they're in. And here I come to the most interesting part. The forensics like to have a woman, not because of that, but because women give more information that men you can have, whether they had sexual relations or not, what has inside, and provides more information. Now, here I'm going to explain something related to Facebook blackmail, and I made a protocol to be given to all law enforcement bodies so that they could help people. And I will explain here that you don't have, or you don't need technical knowledge. Of my profession, I can tell you that what is really fulfilling is to be able to help. You find situations when you see that people need help, and about this example is not technical, but you help the person. This is a true cases. The day before yesterday, just before getting the plane, this girl asked for friendship. Do you think it's normal? Yeah, it's normal. Why? It's normal that this type of woman, of the thousands of men in Facebook, has chosen me. It shows that she's smart, she has a good taste, and she shows many things. But it's not only that. But her friend also sent me a friend request. Those are the profiles that are used. And you know, it's the typical Facebook blackmail. A very good looking, striking looking girl sends you a friend request. And you have to be humble, but people get into the trick where nobody to judge when we work along a victim. People that we're dealing with, all of them are victims. Are victims that are suffering for either psychological harassment, they've been stolen, they had a loss, and you have to deal with them. This is something that you should get ready. You might be a very good technician, but if you don't have empathy, you should work on this. That was this Facebook striking woman sends you a friend request and sending information about where she comes from, that she was living close to your village, and because she had been chatting for 2 days, and then the question is, do you like sex? This type of woman asks you, do you like sex? What are you gonna say? Of course, I'm like more poetry, theater, and those things, but we can speak about sex. Let us talk about sex. I have a webcam. I like cyber sex, and I Google all about cyber sex. Okay, I know how it works. And automatically you switch on a video where this woman is just doing a striptease, and when this video is over, say, oh, the microphone is not working today, but I will be typing the conversation, and it's in playback. And when you've seen everything and you're getting hot, and they say, now it's your turn, show me your neck, show me the body, little by little, and some people just don't go for it. What happens when things are really high? She says, I'm going to show you an erotic video, and you say, yes. You see the video, and you are the main character in this video. You've been recorded, and then it's when you move from a fantastic situation into having a real problem. They have my penis somewhere in the net. And then she says, I know who's your girlfriend, your colleagues, and your family. I'm going to, or you pay me or you will have a problem. And many people really get blocked because they are under a shock. Now, the problem with this blackmail was that many people just kept silent and just paid. And you have a problem. If you pay the first day, you will pay the second and the third. And the second day, this woman will not get in touch with you, but her quote-unquote sister. And then you will have to go on paying. People that did refuse to pay, they went to the law enforcement body saying, I have a problem. You present a claim. And then, well, the case is quite difficult to explain. And what happened that you went to your house with this note and with a great problem. Once you got home, the criminal went on I found cases where people were really bound to do any crazy thing because of the stress. And there is a trend that they are recording you, and when they go down and there's a camera movement with some shading, and they continue with a body that does not belong to you. It's another one, but also a 9-year-old girl, and the title of the video is Mr. X. A pedophile is masturbating in front of a 9-year-old girl. And if this is in your social media, you will really be in trouble. So I created a protocol about how to act in this situation. The only thing you have to do is keep calm, cut the communication with the criminal, with the person, so that she can no longer contact you. They are just mafias. They don't care, they don't give a damn about you. They just want to reach a next number of people. I found situations when I was speaking to the criminals in Spanish and they were talking in Italian, or so there was also a translator. So let's see that you only interrupting the communication. That's a good solution. And we experts, we should help our society and people, because this is just a serious problem. I just have 5 more minutes. I spoke about the web browser, and one of the things that we can do in an autopsy is to get the passwords that are hosted in the browsers. This is very useful when you're dealing with dead people. This is something that is going to be very much discussed, digital inheritance. I went across a case about a woman, 40-something-year-old. She died in a car accident. It was dramatic for her family. Her husband picks up the phone and the social media and gets into the social media, and she finds out about the life of this person. This person gets really gross, and using the profile of the woman that had passed away, starts trying to blackmail. In the past there was not a registry of what we did, but now it is the case, and I can give you many other examples. The same can be said about the mail password. So you can get all passwords, and you know that once you get some passwords from the browser and the email, you know that almost everybody uses the same password for everything. Do you think that forensics use those for simple tools? Well, no. In fact, we use tools. We use the right type of tools. It's important for people to know that not only the bad guys can do and get on their way, but there are people like us that are looking for this evidence, and that they are not impune. People might think that anonymity and impunity go hand by hand. There is not such a thing as anonymity or impunity in the net. That's why we are here. I could speak about many other things about profiles, but I rather give you 5 minutes so that you can ask me questions. Any questions? Please use the microphone.
Espera que te dan el micrófono, si no, no escuchamos nada.
Una pregunta, una cuestión.
I have a question. In the court level, to be a computer expert, do you need any certification? How can you prove? You can say that you are an IT expert and you have to make a report and the judge might take it into account just like this, or do you have any type of certification? In the slide about profiles, my advice is when you go and train on cybersecurity, be aware of where you are trained. There are many different courses and seminars and associations of experts that have a rather bombastic name, but in fact they are nothing. Formal education and about the experts, we'll try to have an official association, because now degrees are very easily given. So you find at courts people without the necessary level. You can be and act as an expert from for the court or by a third party, because you are in a list and you are called. But unluckily today you only have to prove that you have an expertise. More and more judges are starting to request what is the real education. You have formal education. If you like the world of forensics and research, don't be always a freelance. There are law enforcement agencies, and this is a very good possibility. If I was younger, in fact, I would go on this direction. Thank you for your presentation, very interesting presentation, but I'd like to make a comment. I am from the School of Computing Engineers in Cantabria. We pass a list to the courts, either to be public ones. Anybody can ask for an expert. We pass the list around, and you need to be a member of the association. You should have an engineering degree and at least have attended courses on computing expert report. And to conclude, I'd like to stay after everything that happened with this autopsy, and it was a very interesting session. It was really fun. And Dr. Narcis Bardelet said something that stayed with me. You can be more damaging with a computer, an IT device, than with a gun. With a gun you can threaten or you can kill. But how much damage can you get with a computer? I spoke about the victims. They might also need people to support them. You can imagine about all those new professions that are being now created thanks to cybersecurity. And that's all I wanted to say. I'm available to you. Here you have my email address. If you want to have this presentation, to use it at your school or where you live, you are welcome. Thank you.